next session is also really exciting. We will have a few more speakers coming up and sharing and dwelling deeper into the regenerative agriculture aspect, what it means. We heard Baptiste say that it means a lot of things, so let's see if we can consolidate and come to a broader definition of what regenerative means. And then we have Dora and we have a few more speakers talking about the finance and the certification side of sustainability. So I would like to introduce you to the first speaker. Her name is Dora Xu. She's a senior consultant at Metabolic, a sustainability consulting and a venture building firm in Amsterdam. When she's not advising the top fashion brands, financiers, and government or circular strategists, she actually runs a repair cafe in Amsterdam to promote textile circularity. Dora Xu. Our second guest is Lindsay Humphrey. She's the founder of the Rethink Lab. She is a sustainability strategist with a deep expertise in regenerative agriculture and supply chain sustainability. She's been general manager of Mohair South Africa and sustainability manager at BKB. She excels at aligning producers and brand perspective to drive meaningful and practical climate initiative in this industry. We are lucky to have her. Please join our hands to welcome Lindsay. And last but not the least, we have Mariano Serratore. He's an agronomist, an expert in project, business, and risk management. He's currently a technical director at ICEA, a leading Italian certification body. He manages the organic and sustainable production certifications. He also serves on the board of several international organizations, including the COMSOS Standards, IACB, and Responsible MICA Initiative. Welcome, Mariano. So this will be engaging conversations where we have our speakers talk about what they do and how they do it, and I will have some questions to them which will drive the conversation forward. So Lindsay, I want to start with you. And let's address the elephant in the room. What does regenerative mean?
Hi, Ravi. Not the smallest question, and based on this morning, I think that we all know that there is no one universal definition for regenerative agriculture. I also think that it's not anyone's role to try and define it. I think we're spending so much time trying to align on what it is that we're not getting on with the business of actually implementing practices on the ground. I do have a slide that speaks to this, if we can get to that.
Can you have Lindsay's slides, please?
So for me, regenerative agriculture, I'll start with the ethereal higher level. It's a mindset. When we talk about regenerative agriculture on a farm, it's how we manage that farm in every single aspect, not just on land. And it's about adopting practices that go beyond sustainability. So we all understand the role of certification. We understand certification as an entry point. We also understand that we still have farmers that are heading to certification. And when I think about regenerative agriculture, I think about impact beyond certification. What are our farmers doing that's not simply ticking a box of certification? So some of those practices could be improving soil health, promoting biodiversity, increasing water retention with the goal to build more resilient environment. But it will look different across geographies around the world, which is why we understand that we don't have a cookie-cutter approach to regenerative agriculture. In my mind, it's adopting practices that manage, restore, with the ultimate goal to enhance the environment and create a self-sustaining system that benefits the entire ecosystem. And I must stress that for me, regenerative agriculture includes animals, people, and land, because ultimately, our farmers and animals are reliant on each other for life. And without healthy land, we simply cannot see that environment thrive.
Thank you. And following up to the next question to Dora, what are the primary obstacles to building and scaling regenerative ag?
Thanks, Ravi. Great question. So at Metabolic, we work with a diverse set of stakeholders, from brands and retailers to farm co-op to investors. And we have noticed some common patterns of challenges that include, for the producer group, well, access to capital has always been a roadblock. Even though regenerative agriculture can contribute to climate resilience, it has a compelling business case. So not the slides now. So it has a compelling business case in the long term. So I'll show this later, so we can go back to the speaker page. But it's usually deemed unbankable by many mainstream investors due to perceived risk, immaturity, especially during the transition period. And also for the funding that does come in, many of those are distant top-down that fail to fully address what the community need on the ground. And there are many progressive brands that have already invested and committed fund to help farmers to start pilots or set up fund for regenerative agriculture projects, but they are struggling with financial viability in the long term or struggling with monitoring and communicating the impacts in a robust way. And on the financial side, the investors, they're actually very interested in supporting the sustainable transition, but they do have a certain return and risk requirement, and they are hesitant to invest in regen ag that doesn't have a proven track record of return. So most of the funding is flowing into a narrow range of asset class, like renewable energy, green architecture, things that's more on the infrastructural side that has more certain in terms of level of return and risks, leaving a whole range of nature-based solutions overlooked. And when we zoom out, you can see that most of those individual initiatives wrestling this with in a piecemeal and disconnected way that's lacking the critical mass, value chain positioning, and market penetration needed to drive systemic change. That's why it's very important for us to think beyond just one commodity on one farm, but looking at the landscape level, geographic landscape and economic landscape. So in addition to what you can do in your own farm, who else in this region that are doing projects that can have symbiotic relationship? There's a lot of crossover between textile and food and skincare products. So if we can collaborate with different verticals and co-invest in regen ag in the same region, it's lower risk, lower cost for everyone, and better benefits.
Thanks. Then we go to certifications, which are really important because sustainable products are, with the certification, build trust with consumers. It differentiates in the market and also ensures regulatory compliance. And we have Mariano's expert working with the certification agency. How can we use these certifications to help advance regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, thank you for the question, but it is a very hard question. I started from the first slide presented from Lindsay. You saying, this is what means for me regenerative. So certification process, of course, it is a net value for the supply chain. But certification means to be transparent, clear. To be transparent and clear and to have this add value for the supply chain, for each subject in the supply chain, including, of course, the consumer side, we need to have clear rule. So the problem for the regenerative approach in this moment, it is that it is not clear and harmonized definition about what is regenerative. So in that slide, I tried to summarize different, it is just a little part of different approach, different terms, different mean about regenerative, including different label related to certification process. In the past 3 months, I attended 2 different summits about the sustainability approach and supply chain in different sectors, food side and non-food side. So in each summit, the main terms, it was regenerative. So I think that regenerative today, it is a big opportunity for the supply chain in an holistic approach, like Dora said, because it is a big opportunity for the future of our sustainability path in terms of process and supply chain. But behind the regenerative today, there is a big risk. The big risk it is that regenerative can become the same destiny of the world sustainability. So, an overload terms. So this is the risk. So the certification approach and the certification side can help, yes, but we need to define clear rule, harmonized definition, harmonized criteria. We are working with the regenerative side with different organizations. Inside this organization, there is public and private research center and also different stakeholders, public and private. So we are defined for the next IFOM International Congress about the organic, and the next Congress in Taiwan, a conference dedicated to the regenerative, in order to bring all together in the same table different stakeholders in order to set a common manifesto of what it is regenerative. So this is the starting point. But starting with I have just another one. Yes, let's start with the simple things. Because regenerative starting from organic. So the approach that it is behind regenerative approach from the technical side, it is already included in the organic process. So we can create a symbiosis between organic and regenerative. This could be the future, but we have to manage accordingly clear rules, clear definition, and harmonized definition.
Following up, the follow-up question on this is also that a lot of the farmers and a lot of the people already do these practices and they're not certified because the cost of certifications are just too high and it doesn't make any sense to pay that much money for a little bit of, to validate what you're already doing. How can the cost of certification go down so that people who are actually doing these things can use the certification to really prove what they have done?
Yeah. About the cost for certification, I agree. There is a different approach about the type of regenerative growers and also supply chain compared with other supply chain, because we can have small growers or very big growers, including in the supply chain. And so we cannot organize it, the certification approach and, of course, the certification course with group of growers that bring together in the same territory, in the same region, small growers, or the head of the supply chain can manage accordingly. And, of course, from the certification body side, if the quality system from the head of the supply chain that, of course, will be monitored. And during the time, if it is enough to guarantee the quality approach, of course, the certification body can reduce the number of growers that each year can and need to be audited. So, for example, the square root or other type of system. So this, of course, have an impact related to the cost. But I think that different way can apply it in a reasonable way. But the important thing is to be clear of what the grower and producer have, the company have to do it. Thank you.
Coming to the growers, Lindsay, How does you characterize the current global state of regenerative agriculture, and especially regarding its impact on the Tier 4 suppliers?
Another very big question, and one that I'm working very closely to. I do have a slide that speaks to this as well. But I'll start with what we're seeing out there. So firstly, momentum. We're seeing a massive momentum in this space across the supply chain, from growers themselves asking questions, starting to understand what it means. And by no means am I saying that growers have not been regenerative or not been practicing regenerative for decades. They have been, but they recognize that the supply chain is interested in that, in those practices. And then we are also seeing the request from the other side of the supply chain. And it's been quite an interesting synergy in the middle, because the understanding from across that supply chain is quite different. So regenerative for me, like I said, is the boundary of your making. And within a brand or retailer, it's going to depend on the resource that they have. You very quickly know what the resource looks like when you receive the question. So you've got brands like Amanda's that is very well resourced, very well researched, and understand what they're asking. We also have smaller brands and retailers that are mid-luxury retailers that don't have specific roles within their sustainability departments that are looking at us and asking us to define what it is. So first is regenerative agriculture. We see it gaining significant attention, with the details fragmented, as we've just already discussed on the stage, but the opportunities are rife. I think we can all agree in this room, as natural materials, we're sitting in a really good position to become a solution to climate's problem, but we need collective action. And different role players working towards aligned goals, but efforts are often uncoordinated. And what I refer to in that space is we have different programs. I'm very happy to see that in South Africa specific, all brokerages and all farm groups are working on regenerative programs. And my ultimate goal is that every farmer, regardless of what his supply chain looks like, has access to that information, has access to support in that space, and that it's not defined to a particular company that you happen to be selling your wool mohair through. And then the complexity, we've discussed this as well, is a lack of alignment of what metrics should be focused on, causing confusion for both the farmers and their markets. I often sit in conversations with brands going, but this is the measurement that this one program uses, and another program uses an entirely different measurement. So which one is the right one? Or which one, and imagine having to understand every single, I'm not a scientist, we have some scientists in the room, brands certainly aren't equipped with scientists, not every brand, trying to understand how do we differentiate these programs from one another. And then the harmonization is my answer, is that as an industry, natural fiber industry, what we are learning, we need to share with one another. Across programs, pre-competitively, we need to actually assist each other along this journey. We need to harmonize our language, because collectively we know we are a very small percentage of the textile industry globally. And if we are going out with different conversations, or we're selling different methodologies, or talking down certain methodologies, we're doing ourselves no favors. Also, if we see the wool industry quite far advanced, the mohair industry, we see all these industries coming together, is let's share the work we've already done. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So cashmere, alpaca, whatever's happening in those industries, let's sit together, let's show you what we've developed over the last couple of years, that you don't have to start from ground level. You can start at the collective level of knowledge that we've all learned over that period of time.
Yeah, it's a collective effort, definitely the need of the hours, and the all industries coming together to really have a united voice on it. Coming to that, Dora, what governance structures are needed to do that, to scale regenerative ag?
Yeah, great. I'm not only going to talk about governance mechanism, but also where the money can come from. Yeah. And I have some slides to show for illustration. It's the one that's previous one. Basically, we have been working on what we call place-based transition fund to scale regenerative agriculture. to overcome, it's basically an innovative financing and governance mechanism to connect the fragmented solutions and then build more integrated, holistic solutions at the regional scale. And has 3 key elements: financial innovation, community-centered, and impact monitoring. On the financial side, we pool capital from various sources to balance the risk, return, and impact for appetite of different types of investors to de-risk the projects. For instance, mainstream investors are interested, but they may require at least 8% return within a certain payback period. So Regen Ag might be considered too risky for them. But impact investor might be okay with 4% return if there is a certain impact that can be demonstrated. Whereas philanthropic funders or many brands and groups have already earmarked, committed hundreds of millions of euros in regenerative fund. Those are mostly in the form of grants, but you can only go so far with donating the money away, while this funding and as well as impact investment can be used as a leverage to activate more capital. Because if mainstream investors would think that it's less risky for them to chip in if there's already funding donated. So by blending the capital, we can de-risk the project and amplify the finance already committed to activate more capital from the large institutional investors. On the portfolio construction level, we also blend different asset class or different types of projects to create, to balance the risk and return on the portfolio level, which I will discuss in more details in the next slide. And then once we raise so much funding, to ensure they are deployed in a way that meet the local community's need the best, it has to be managed by a local foundation. In the form of steward ownership, so like how Patagonia has been doing, by combining nonprofit management with for-profit investable subsidiaries, we can attract external capital while building wealth and agency within the local community. So it has 2 key principles. One is self-determination, so the communities are involved in the designing and implementation of the projects. And the second principle is purpose serving. So it's to ensure the long-term mission is kept instead of maximizing shareholder value, is to maximize the regenerative mission of such a fund. So in addition to the return that's being promised to the investors, any additional profit could be reinvested in the community. So this local foundation could charge, say, 1% of the equity as a management fee to oversee and distribute the fund in the best way possible that fit the local context. And lastly is on the impact monitoring, which means we need to set robust targets that's holistic. So looking beyond just carbon emissions, but also as Lindsay mentioned and Elizabeth and Gunter's all mentioned, that there are many other co-benefits that can be generated in ecosystem services, in biodiversity, in soil health, social benefits, livelihood. So we need to set holistic baseline and geographically contextualized targets. So not just in terms of how many gigatons of carbon can we sequester, but also what percentage of the carbon credit or carbon budget are you contributing in this region? And then lastly, working with certification body, working with academia, with public to do more independent measurement of the impact that's being generated so that the brands can communicate the progress, and also investors can keep telling the stories and ensuring additional funding to come in. And in the next slide, I will show an indicative portfolio. So this is basically encouraging us to look beyond just your own verticals, but looking at who else could benefit. So this is basically different types of projects that can have symbiotic relationship within the same region. And then the ranking of risk, return, and impact are purely indicative, but basically to show that like the greener is better and the red is less ideal. So to give an example, pasture cropping has been used in some Australian merino sheep farm that combine grazing system with crop growing system in a symbiotic way that utilize the natural fertilizer from the sheep for the land to reduce the input needed from chemical fertilizer and also reduce the machinery costs for cutting the grass, while also retain soil nutrient and water as such. So merino sheep farming might be very beneficial to combine with legumes, cereal, and such. And also think beyond like wool industry can also collaborate with meat industry and talk to leather industry or dairy. So to have multiple co-investor to engage in the same area, then we can use a relatively smaller amount of resources to maximize the impact. In addition, could the local community benefit from, say, real estate development for a processing facility, for better storage, for renewable energy, better transportation system? Infrastructural projects like this have a more proven record of return and risks, so they are less risky for investors. So when combined in the portfolio, we can use project that has high return, low risk to subsidize those that has high impact, maybe higher risk in the short term, like regen ag. So on the portfolio level, the return and risk level is balanced, but then you can still achieve the impact needed. And on the next slide, I will show the desired outcome for the different stakeholders. For producers, it's quite clear that it can ensure that we get better access to capital, reduce transition risk, improve resilience to climate change, and increase profitability from multiple outputs, not only from your commodity, but also from the green assets like carbon credits, renewable energy credits, biodiversity credits, or payment for other ecosystem services. Those co-benefits that your industry can have to other industry has not been measured and communicated so far, so it's hard to monetize them. But once we combine them in a holistic way, then it's a much better story. For the off-takers, it could be from textile, it could be from food, from even public, like government, for the renewable energy and carbon credits and such. So the off-takers can enjoy high-quality fiber, more secure supply chain, meet your nature targets, and you also generate social co-benefits. For the founder and investor, for the philanthropic founders, you can amplify your impact with the funding you're already committed. You can say, we donate 200 million euros to this, but we help channel 5 times that amount towards regenerative growth in that region. And then better data and story for the investors. For the mainstream investor, they get profitable deals with a good impact. And for the enablers, the regional government, of course, will benefit from infrastructural development and social livelihood. And also for certification body, that means there's more certified products on the market. So we have been experimenting elements of this with Rockefeller Foundation and some other partners in the food and skincare industry by establishing 4 lighthouse projects in different locations of the world in South America, US, India, and one part of Africa. But we're exploring the opportunity to open the door to textile industry because there's so much synergies and crossover. So if you're interested, come talk to me, and I'll be happy to share more.
Thank you. I think we definitely need to have more people to contribute and look beyond just one commodity and look at the whole ecosystem, look at the whole, everything that comes together and makes the land use and the people who are participating with the land, give them equal opportunities. Thank you so much, Dora, Lindsay, and Mariano. They are here. If you have any further questions, please reach out to them, ask them, and we're going to move to the next session. Thank you so much.